I was at the airport, the hum of the early morning terminal, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. My flight to Montana was boarding soon, a flight that would take me to the inheritance hearing for my late father's ranch. Everything felt quiet, normal, until an airport security officer walked straight up to me, his expression unreadable. "Sir, please come with us." My heart hammered against my ribs. They told me there had been a report, a claim that I was a potential threat, that someone believed I might do something dangerous at the courthouse. I explained, calmly, clearly, that this had to be a misunderstanding. I was simply traveling to honor my father's final plans. The officer, Collins, studied my face for a long moment. Then, he turned a tablet screen towards me. "This is the person who reported you." I froze. "My son, Benjamin. Before we go any further, thank you for being here. Seriously, if this story resonates with you, take a second to comment where you're watching from anywhere in the world. It helps this channel grow, and it reminds me that none of us are alone in moments like this. And just so you know, some details in this story have been dramatized for education and entertainment. Any similarity to real names or locations is purely coincidental, but the lesson I'm sharing is something I truly believe matters. I need to tell you why I was standing at Portland Airport security at 6:15 in the morning on October 15, 2024, with my hands shaking from 3 cups of coffee and 0 hours of sleep. My father, Arthur Fletcher, died 3 weeks ago, a heart attack in his sleep on September 24th. He was 82 years old and had spent 60 years building Fletcher Ranch in Montana, 500 acres of cattle land that he worked with his own 2 hands. No loans, no shortcuts, just decades of sunrise to sunset labor that turned raw Montana earth into something worth fighting for. The funeral was small. My son Benjamin showed up, stood in the back, and left without saying a word to me. That was fine. We hadn't been close in years. But yesterday he finally called and said, "We need to talk about Grandpa's will." That was it. "No, I'm sorry for your loss." "No, how are you holding up?" "Just business. Cold, transactional." Here's what Benjamin didn't know. 6 months before he died, my father changed his will. The old one split everything 50-50 between me and Benjamin. The new one left everything to me. 100%. The ranch, the house, the cattle, all of it. So this morning, I had a flight to Montana. There was a probate hearing at Park County Courthouse at 10 o'clock sharp. Benjamin's lawyer had filed a motion to contest the will. My father's attorney, Philip Garrett, told me I needed to be there in person. No exceptions. I'd done the math 100 times. Wheels up at 7 o'clock, land at 9:15, drive 45 minutes to the courthouse. Tight, but possible. That's why I was at airport security at 6:15 a.m., placing my bag on the conveyor belt. Inside were my father's letters. 30 years of correspondence carefully organized. His medical records, personal journals. Everything I needed to prove he was sound of mind when he made that final decision. I walked through the metal detector. No beep. Clean. I reached for my bag on the other side, already calculating my next moves. Gate C7. Maybe grab coffee. Review Philip's notes one more time before... "Excuse me, sir." The voice came from my left. A TSA officer, mid-30s, with the kind of neutral expression that comes from years of dealing with difficult passengers. Officer Collins, according to his badge. His partner, Officer Parker, stood a few feet behind him. Yes, I kept my voice even. 30 years of teaching high school had trained me for moments like this. Stay calm, don't react. "We need you to come with us, please." My stomach dropped, but I kept my face neutral. "Is there a problem?" "Just some routine questions." "This way." Collins gestured toward a door marked, "Security Office, Authorized Personnel Only." Parker picked up my carry-on without asking. The message was clear. This wasn't optional. Stay calm. This is just like dealing with a student who's lying to your face. Don't react. Listen first. They led me down a narrow corridor into a small office. No windows, gray walls, one metal table bolted to the floor with 3 chairs that looked like they'd been there since the 1990s. The air smelled like stale coffee and cleaning solution. Collins motioned for me to sit. I did. Parker set my bag on the table and took up position by the door, not blocking it, but close enough to send a message. "Mr. Fletcher," Collins began, pulling out a tablet. "We received a report about you this morning." My heart rate kicked up, but I kept my hands flat on the table. "What kind of report?" Collins glanced at the screen, then back at me. "A phone call came in earlier. Caller identified himself as Benjamin Fletcher. He said he was your son." The room tilted slightly. "Benjamin." "The call came in at 4:47 this morning," Collins continued. His tone was professionally neutral, but his eyes were watching me carefully. "The caller stated that you were traveling today. He expressed concern that you might pose a potential threat to public safety. 4:47 a.m., 2.5 hours before my flight." "A threat?" The word came out rougher than I intended. "What kind of threat?" Parker shifted his weight by the door. "The caller claimed you'd been acting erratically since your father's recent death. He mentioned an inheritance dispute, said you'd made statements about doing whatever it takes to get what you believe you deserve." Those words. My exact words from yesterday's phone call. I'd said them in frustration, in grief, in the aftermath of losing the man who taught me everything about integrity and doing things the right way. I'd meant I would fight legally, through proper channels. Benjamin had turned them into something else. "Officers," I said carefully, "I'm a retired high school teacher. I've never been arrested, never been in a fight. My father died 3 weeks ago. There's a probate hearing in Montana this morning. I need to be there." Collins studied me. "And your son, where does he fit into this?" "He's contesting my father's will. So there is a dispute. A legal one. The kind that happens in courtrooms, not airports." Parker spoke from his position by the door. "Your son sounded genuinely concerned, Mr. Fletcher. He gave us specific details. Your flight time, your destination. He knew exactly what you'd be carrying." Ice water flooded my veins. Benjamin hadn't just called to report a vague concern. He'd given them my entire itinerary. Every detail calculated to make this stop as long and thorough as possible. "Mr. Fletcher," Collins said, "you understand why we have to take this seriously. A family member calls us, says his father might be dangerous, gives us specific travel information. We can't just ignore that." "I understand." My voice sounded hollow. "You're doing your job. What I didn't say was, and my son knew exactly what job you'd do. He knew exactly how long this would take." Collins glanced at his watch. "It's 6:28. When does your flight board?" 6:52. 24 minutes. The hearing started at 10. If I missed this flight, there wasn't another one that would get me there in time. Benjamin's lawyer would argue that I didn't care enough to show up, that my father made a mistake trusting me with his legacy. Collins was still watching me, tablet in hand, waiting for something. An explanation, a reaction, proof that his son's concern was justified, or proof that it wasn't. I thought about the funeral 3 weeks ago. Benjamin standing at the back of the chapel, arms crossed, face unreadable. He'd barely acknowledged me. Our relationship had been strained for years, ever since he'd dropped out of college, chasing get-rich-quick schemes that always ended in failure, and me bailing him out. I took a deep breath. My father was a rancher. He built everything he had with his own hands. He valued hard work, honesty, integrity. He taught me that. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Benjamin, he's always struggled with that. He sees success as something to be acquired, not earned." Collins raised an eyebrow. "And this inheritance dispute? My father changed his will 6 months before he died. He left everything to me." Benjamin was cut out. The officers exchanged a glance. That explained the "whatever it takes" comment. "What proof do you have that your father was of sound mind when he made this change?" Collins asked. I gestured to my carry-on. "His journals, medical records, letters, they're all in there. Philip Garrett, his attorney, can corroborate everything." Collins nodded slowly. "All right, Mr. Fletcher. We're going to need to review these documents. This will take some time." My heart sank. Time was the one thing I didn't have. "How long?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "As long as it takes to ensure public safety," Parker said, his voice flat. I sat there, watching the clock tick, each second a hammer blow against my chances. My flight boarded. Then it departed. Benjamin had won this round. He had successfully sabotaged my ability to attend the hearing. By the time they cleared me, it was 8:30 a.m. Too late. I called Philip Garrett, my father's attorney, my voice tight with frustration. Benjamin called the airport police. I missed my flight. There was a pause on the other end. I'm sorry, Scott. I'll explain to the judge, but it won't look good. I arrived in Park County, Montana, the next morning, feeling defeated. The hearing had been postponed for 24 hours, giving me a slim chance. When I walked into the courthouse, Benjamin was already there, flanked by his lawyer, Conrad Mitchell. Benjamin smirked, a look of triumph on his face. The courtroom was packed with local ranchers, many of whom had known my father for decades. Judge Merrick, a stern-faced woman with a reputation for fairness, called the court to order. Conrad Mitchell, Benjamin's lawyer, began by painting me as an opportunistic son who had manipulated his elderly father. He argued that Arthur Fletcher, in his declining health, had been unduly influenced by me to disinherit his grandson. Your Honor, Mitchell declared, the sudden and complete disinheritance of Benjamin Fletcher, a direct descendant, is highly suspicious. We believe Arthur Fletcher was not of sound mind or was coerced by Scott Fletcher when he executed this new will. Philip Garrett, my father's attorney, stood up. Your Honor, we will present evidence that Arthur Fletcher was of full testamentary capacity and that his decision was a deliberate, well-considered act, documented in his own words. The judge nodded. Mr. Garrett, you may proceed. Philip began by presenting medical records, showing my father was mentally sharp until his final days. Then, he brought out a worn, leather-bound journal. Your Honor, Arthur Fletcher kept detailed journals for over 40 years. These entries, written in his own hand, will shed light on his true intentions. He turned to a marked page. This entry is dated December 26, 2023. It reads, Christmas was tough this year. Benjamin came by, not to celebrate, but to ask for money. Again. Said he needed $50,000 for some investment opportunity. When I told him I couldn't just hand over that kind of cash, he got angry. Said, You're old, Grandpa. You're going to die soon anyway. The courtroom went absolutely still. What's that? Judge Merrick leaned forward. That was the moment I knew. That exact moment. My grandson didn't see me as a person. He saw me as a bank account with a heartbeat. He was just waiting for me to die so he could cash out. I told him to leave. He left. Didn't even say goodbye properly. Benjamin's face had gone white. Amanda, his wife, put her hand on his arm, tears streaming down her face. Philip continued, his voice steady. I'm going to change my will tomorrow. I don't want to, but I have to. If I give this ranch to Benjamin, he'll sell it before my body is cold. He'll burn through the money in 5 years and have nothing left. No lessons learned. No character built. Just zero. So, Scott will understand. Scott always understood me. The silence was absolute. A few of the locals were crying openly. Judge Merrick removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. I clenched my jaw. I'd never known this had happened. Benjamin had never told me about Christmas 2023, about asking for $50,000, about what he'd said to our father. Philip let the silence sit for a moment, then turned another page. April 15, 2024, the day Arthur changed his will. 5 months before his death, went to Philip's office today, changed the will. Hardest thing I've done since burying my wife. But I know it's right. My Benjamin will hate me for this. Maybe forever. I accept that, because I'm doing this out of love. Strange kind of love maybe. But love nonetheless. If I give him $4 million right now, he'll destroy himself with it. He'll never learn, never grow. But if Scott gets it, I know what will happen. Scott will give Benjamin a way back. That's who my son is. He never gives up on anyone, even when they've given up on themselves. My throat tightened. That was Dad. Always seeing the best version of who you could be, even when you couldn't see it yourself. Philip turned to the final marked page. His voice dropped slightly. April 18th, 2024. 3 days after the will was changed. 5 months before Arthur died. Benjamin called this afternoon. He knows. Someone told him I changed the will. Probably Sharon at Philip's office. She never could keep her mouth shut. He called me a senile old man. Said I was being manipulated by Dad. And everyone knows Scott poisoned me against him. I told him, Benjamin, Your father never said a bad word about you. Not one. You did this to yourself. Every time you chose money over family. Every time you asked me what I was worth instead of how I was doing. Every time you only called when you needed something. He screamed into the phone. Said, "You're going to regret this. You're going to die knowing you destroyed this family." I said, "I'll die knowing I tried to save you from yourself. That's enough." He hung up. I don't think I'll hear from him again. Maybe that's for the best. I'm at peace with this decision. Some lessons a man has to learn the hard way. Maybe losing this ranch will teach Benjamin what owning it never could. Philip closed the journal carefully. The courtroom was silent except for someone crying in the gallery. Judge Merrick looked at Benjamin for a long moment. Then, "Benjamin Fletcher, did you, or did you not, threaten your grandfather 3 days after he changed his will?" Benjamin's voice was barely audible. I was angry. I didn't mean—" "What did you tell your grandfather? That he would die knowing he destroyed the family?" "I was upset. I wasn't thinking." Judge Merrick's voice went cold. "Sounds like a threat to me. Your grandfather died 5 months later of a sudden heart attack. And now you're in my courtroom, trying to overturn the very will you threatened him about." The implication hung in the air. Not that Benjamin had caused the heart attack. 5 months was too long for that. But that he'd made threats, waited for Arthur to die, and immediately moved to contest the will he'd been cut out of. Exactly what Arthur had predicted. Conrad Mitchell stood quickly. "Your Honor, my client's emotional reaction to family conflict doesn't invalidate, Counselor." Judge Merrick held up one hand. "I've heard enough for now. We're going to take a 15-minute recess. When we come back, I want to hear from Mr. Scott Fletcher directly. Because so far all the evidence shows a grandfather who was mentally sound, a grandson who made threats when he didn't get what he wanted, and a son who showed up every month for 5 years without asking for a dime." She banged the gavel once. 15 minutes. Everyone stood as the judge left the bench. The moment he was gone, the courtroom erupted in whispers. I sat there, Arthur's words still echoing in my head. "But Scott will give Benjamin a way back. That's who my son is." Dad had known me better than I knew myself. Even in death, he was still teaching me. When the 15 minutes ended, Judge Merrick returned to the bench. The courtroom fell silent. He placed the gavel down without striking it, leaned back, and surveyed both sides of the room. "I've practiced law in Montana for 38 years, he began calmly. "I've handled probate cases for over 2 decades. I've seen families destroyed over money and land, but I rarely see a case this clear." Conrad began to rise. Judge Merrick lifted a finger. "Don't, Counselor." Conrad sat. "Arthur Fletcher kept journals for 40 years. We've reviewed entries from his final 9 months. They establish 3 facts beyond doubt. 1. Arthur Fletcher possessed full testamentary capacity. His memory, reasoning, and judgment were intact. 2. The change to his will was not suspicious. It was a direct response to a specific incident, the Christmas visit, where Benjamin Fletcher demanded $50,000 and remarked that his grandfather was dying soon anyway. 3. There was no undue influence from Scott Fletcher. On the contrary, the journals show a father who deeply loved both his son and grandson, but who recognized that one needed to be protected from himself, and the other was capable of providing that protection. Judge Merrick looked directly at Benjamin. "Mr. Fletcher, you stated under oath that you were upset and not thinking when you made those threats. However, your actions since your grandfather's death, including filing this motion and attempting to prevent your father from attending this hearing, suggest a calculated effort to overturn a will you knew was valid. This court finds your actions to be disrespectful to the memory of your grandfather and an abuse of the legal process." He then looked at me. "Mr. Scott Fletcher, your father's faith in you was clearly justified. You have presented yourself with dignity and integrity throughout this difficult process." Judge Merrick then delivered his verdict. "Based on the overwhelming evidence, this court finds that the last will and testament of Arthur Fletcher, dated April 15, 2024, is valid and enforceable. The motion to contest the will is denied. The estate, including Fletcher Ranch, is awarded in its entirety to Scott Fletcher." He paused, then added, "Furthermore, due to the frivolous nature of this challenge and the attempt to obstruct legal proceedings, Benjamin Fletcher is ordered to pay all legal fees incurred by the estate, totaling $45,000. He banged the gavel. Case closed. Benjamin looked stunned, his face ashen. Amanda was openly weeping. Conrad Mitchell quickly gathered his papers, avoiding eye contact. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as people began to leave. I walked over to Benjamin. "I'm sorry it came to this, son." He just stared at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and despair. "You won," he spat. "You always win." "No, Benjamin," I said quietly. "Dad won. He won by giving you a chance to learn, even if it's the hard way." Over the next few months, things were incredibly difficult. Benjamin refused to speak to me. He and Amanda moved out of their apartment, unable to afford it, with the legal fees hanging over them. I offered to help, but he wouldn't take my calls. Then, one day, Amanda called. She was pregnant, and Benjamin was lost. He was drinking, gambling again. He'd lost his job. She was scared. That night, I drove to their small, rented house. Benjamin answered the door, looking disheveled and hollow. "What do you want?" he slurred. "I want to talk," I said. "About your grandfather, about the ranch, about you." He let me in. We sat in silence for a long time. Then, I started talking. Not about his failures, but about mine. About the times I'd messed up, the mistakes I'd made, the lessons my father had taught me. I told him about the journal entries, about Dad's belief that I would give him a way back. Benjamin listened, tears slowly tracking paths down his dirty face. When I finished, he was quiet for another long moment. "He really thought that," he whispered. "He thought you'd help me?" "He knew you, Benjamin," I said. "He knew that deep down, you're a good man. You just lost your way." I offered him a job on the ranch, not as an owner, but as a worker. He'd earn a fair wage, enough to support his family, and every penny he earned beyond that would go towards paying off the legal fees. He'd have to live on the ranch, learn the ropes, work hard, no shortcuts. He looked at me, then at Amanda, who was standing in the doorway, her hand on her belly. He nodded. "Okay, Dad, I'll do it." It wasn't easy. The first few months were a struggle. Benjamin was used to city life, not the grueling demands of ranching. But he showed up every day, rain or shine. He learned to mend fences, herd cattle, fix machinery. He was still rough around the edges, but I saw a flicker of the man my father believed he could be. He started attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings. He paid back the legal fees, slowly but steadily. Amanda, with her new real estate license, started working from an office in the ranch house, building an honest reputation in Park County. And then, Emma was born. On January 15th, 2025, exactly 1 year after Arthur's death. Now 9 months old, she crawled everywhere, laughed at the chickens, and loved the ranch without needing to understand why. That October morning was clear and bright. Benjamin's truck pulled in, but instead of heading to the barn, he walked onto the porch with a cup of coffee and sat beside me. "No work today?" I asked. "I need to talk to you," Benjamin said. My chest tightened. "Something wrong?" "I got an offer. My old firm in Seattle. Senior partner, $250,000 a year." I exhaled slowly. "That's a big opportunity. You could pay off everything fast. Give Amanda and Emma an easy life." "And?" I asked. I turned it down. I looked at him. "Why?" "Because I'm not that man anymore," Benjamin said. "The one who chased money and shortcuts. Grandpa didn't leave me the ranch because I wasn't ready. I didn't deserve it then, but now I'm becoming someone who might." He hesitated. "So I wanted to ask if you'd teach me how to actually run this place. The business, the planning. Not as a worker, as a partner, and someday, if I earn it, as the next generation." I studied him. The change was undeniable. Physically stronger, mentally steady, spiritually present. Arthur's gamble had worked. "Your grandfather left me the ranch," I said, "but he left you a choice." Benjamin leaned in. "Redemption or resentment? You chose redemption." I nodded. "Partners? 50-50? Benjamin's eyes filled. "You mean it?" "You'll learn while I handle operations. When you're ready, it becomes yours. Not because you inherited it, because you earned it." They shook hands, equal. then hugged. The first real hug in years. Later, I stood by Arthur's grave beneath the cottonwood tree and read the final journal entry aloud. When I finished, I smiled. He earned it, Dad. The wind rustled the leaves. I walked back toward the house. Benjamin sat on the porch, showing Emma how to touch a chicken egg. Amanda watched, smiling, one hand on her belly. She was pregnant again. 4 generations. The ranch endured, and Arthur Fletcher's hardest bet had finally paid off, not in land, but in the man who learned to deserve it. And to you, listening to this story, remember this. I never thought I'd be the kind of dad telling a family story about revenge, but here we are. When my father, Arthur, changed that will, I thought it was the cruelest thing he could do to Benjamin. I was wrong. It was the most loving. God gave me 3 chances to see the truth. First, when Arthur died and left me everything, I didn't understand why. Second, when Benjamin attacked me in court and at the airport, I wanted to fight back, but something held me. Third, when I sat on that porch and told my son about my own failures, that's when God whispered, "Mercy isn't weakness, it's strength." This family story taught me that a dad's revenge isn't about destroying your child when they betray you. Real dad revenge, the kind that changes lives, is refusing to let them destroy themselves. It's saying, "I won't give up on you even when you've given up on yourself." Don't be like me. Don't wait for a funeral and a courtroom battle to learn that forgiveness is something you build brick by brick, fence post by fence post, day by painful day. Start now, because the people you love won't wait forever. My father's dad revenge wasn't punishment, it was redemption, and thank God he was right. If this family story moved you, if you've ever wondered whether dad revenge could actually be love in disguise, drop a comment below. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel, because the stories we tell next will challenge you, inspire you, and maybe even change how you see your own family story. Thank you for staying until the end, and a fair warning. The stories ahead contain fictional elements created for educational purposes. If this isn't for you, feel free to exit and find content that suits you better. But if you're ready for more truth wrapped in story, I'll see you in the next one.